Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of IV Games Weekly. I am joined by Max Anderson. Max, you are our special guest today. I know I always say you're not our special guest, but
I'm
you are
always
today.
special. It's good to be
Uh,
here.
yeah, I'm really happy that we don't have to listen to Zach today. So
I'm gonna miss the Zach is Frozen banner though.
that's true. That is my favorite part of the show. I'm really excited to talk about today because I actually have some questions for you that I haven't heard the answer to yet. But we're starting a new series today, guys. And the guys, y'all, everyone, I'm working on it, Max. And the new series is called Our Path to Kickstarter. And I wanted to kind of talk about the different steps that it took us to get Moonrakers to Kickstarter, Veiled Fate to Kickstarter, and our next game to Kickstarter. And that's just questions that we get all the time in our Discord, and it's questions we get on social media and email. And I think that it would be really helpful for just seeing how some people do it. There's definitely not one way to do it. Our way is not the only way or the best way. But I think it can help anyone just to kind of hear how other people are getting their games made. And so today we are talking about how your game is bad. The first step of any Kickstarter is obviously coming up with the initial idea. And Max, would you say all our ideas sucked at the beginning?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, at this point, I'd be amazed if people are just getting that lucky on the first try.
Yeah, there's nobody getting that lucky, I don't think. But before we get to that, I have some housekeeping stuff to do. We are doing something really cool on the Discord, not the Kickstarter, where we are doing tons of playtesting right now. We have a new expansion for Moonrakers we're working on. We have our next game we're working on, and we wanted to give back to those people that took the time to do those tests for us. So we're actually going to do a drawing live on show today to pick for a Kickstarter exclusive edition of Moonrakers, which if you already have, sell it. They sell really well right now. So we're going to do a live drawing for that in a second. But I also want to talk about we're going to be doing a lot more content next week. We're trying out a lot of new stuff. I think we're doing 4 live streams instead of 1, and we're going to see what sticks. I'm really excited about it. We're going to be playing some games. We're going to be talking about some things that are on Kickstarter, and then of course we're going to be doing IV Games Weekly. And I might play Red Rising. I'm really excited. I'm either going to play Red Rising or I'm going to play Railroad Inc., which I moved over to there. I just got the big Kickstarter edition. Yeah, they're almost the same. I think they're the same creators and everything. Everything's the same about it. But yeah, let's do that drawing. We're going to see how this thing works. I've never used this before, but it's a little name picker. And some people play tested twice. Their name is on here twice. Don't worry, it's not cheating. So I think I just have to press this button and it's going to pick a winner for us. And this is Discord names, so hopefully it...
Hey, it's Maples!
It's Maples! Congratulations, Maples.
What a
you
guy.
Got a Kickstarter exclusive edition of Moonrakers. We will get that to you very, very soon. I wish you were still in Nashville, but it would have been easier to give it to you then. But yeah. All right. So if you want to win something, you can come play test, or you actually can win a Kickstarter exclusive edition of Moonrakers by watching this show. And all you have to do is, when the show is over, in the comment section, comment with the word playtesting, because playtesting is one of the things we're going to talk a lot about today. You have to make it creative though. If it's just playtesting, the word, I will not put it in the drawing for the name, or the name drawer. So I want to laugh while I'm working, you know. So you have to wait till the stream is over. It won't work if you put it in the comments right now. And then yeah, we'll do that on Monday night. So if you're watching this weekend, hello, and please remember to comment there. Also, while we're talking, please ask questions. We'll put them on screen. We'll talk about your take on something, or we'll try to answer your questions. So, all right, cool. Let's get started. So do you want to start, Max, by kind of like talking about each game and kind of where the initial ideas came from? Do you think that's probably the best way to go about it?
Of all of ours?
Yeah, of all of ours.
Yeah, why not? That's fun.
So I think Moonrakers was Christmas, like around Christmas of 2017. So it was quite a long time ago now, back before the pandemic. And this was Zach mainly. Zach wanted to play board games, and we'd been playing a lot of Dominion. And I love Dominion, but I hated watching other people take their turns. And I think I was complaining about that to Zach. And so Zach was like, well, let's make a deck builder with no or little downtime. And that feels like going to space with your friends and doing missions. And we went to what was the conference in Boston that we went to, Max? For Bouncy Smash. Yeah, it was PAX. We went to PAX for a video game we'd made. And we were playing this game, and I think we were playing for like 2 hours, and I played like 2 rounds, and I just remember it feeling terrible. Do you remember that? In the lobby that night, we were drinking like all that hot chocolate because they had that amazing hot chocolate machine.
Right. I totally forgot about that. I didn't realize we had it ready to go then.
Yeah, we were playing it then. I just remember there being like enemies. Like you weren't trying to complete contracts, you were trying to kill like big ships, and they all had their own decks and their own action trees and their own damage, and it just like took an hour to play a single like turn basically. And I think that's we already talked about how all games suck, but like Moonrakers probably should have ended then. I think it was that bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, they all feel that bad though at the beginning, and I think we have a tendency of like really throwing a lot at the initial game, which is something we should talk about, is like where that comes from. But I feel like it's like we put it all on the paper first and just end up with this massive thing.
It's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a fun mechanic. Throw it in there. It's great.
And just like theoretically balancing things on paper.
Chuck White asked, what was the worst concept you had when first designing your games? My first game design is not Moonrakers. My first game design, well, I mean, after I was a child, I think I made some as a child, but was a castle game where you were building walls against the people at different parts of the table from you, and then also catapults. And it was like, I played it once with my brother-in-law, who, bless him for doing that with me. It was unplayable. It was terrible. I never touched it again. And that's what we're going to talk about not doing. But that was our worst concept. My worst concept. Max, do you have a bad concept?
I started briefly on a game with a plumber theme, and it was with a bunch of like mini.
Did they wear like red and green outfits and like jump around a bunch?
That'd be a pretty good game, though.
It sounds like a good game.
You don't have many board games for Mario.
I wonder if that'd be hard to get the rights to. Who knows?
It was my first attempt at being like, you know what? Let's go theme first, and let's just figure out a game for it. And that is totally a way to go.
Oh yeah,
I can't do it. I just like, here's a mini plunger. What do I do with it? And it's like, I got nothing.
Dane said Zach couldn't be here today because he's practicing Azul, and that is 100% what Zach is doing. He can't lose, so he's got to work really hard at it.
He's also just not here because he's afraid that every time we'll just play Azul.
Wonder Wombat Nicholas said Super Namario Bros because of Namari, one of our characters in Veiled Fate, one of the demigods of Veiled Fate. He did an amazing fan art of him as Mario, but Namari, I won't explain the joke. It's funny though. Thank you. All right. So Veiled Fate was way after Moonrakers, obviously. The first idea though came while we were driving to the airport from our Dice Tower play of Moonrakers during the Kickstarter campaign. Zach and I played a game called Hips. Did you ever play Hips with us, Max? Mm-hmm. Hidden in Plain Sight. It's like an old Xbox game where you're like in a crowd and you're like moving people around trying to accomplish objectives without the other person figuring out which little person in the crowd you are. So you kind of have to like walk and move really slowly so as to not stand out from this crowd. And that was like the feeling that we wanted. Like, how can we make a board game about hiding in plain sight? And of course, social deduction was a part of that, and hidden roles was a part of that. But the first game of that, I can't remember if you were in town for it. I think you were. And me and you and Zach played in the office late. It was like around Christmas. And it was like
one and only physical version of that game for a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because the pandemic happened and we didn't make any more physical versions. But like they had like action abilities, like there was like different stats of like intellect and strength and agility, and it was bad. I remember not wanting to finish that game pretty fast.
And there were initially multiple steps from the city to each region, like just in between steps.
There was like hexes. It was huge. It was a huge map. You're right. No, that was terrible. I remember really holding on to that though. I really wanted it to stay a big map, and boy was that wrong. We're gonna talk about that too in a couple of minutes. Dane said, question for VF and Moonrakers, was it gameplay or theme? I actually think it was neither. I think it was a feeling. Like, and maybe that's theme, but like Zach's thing for Moonrakers was space missions with your friends. That kind of feels like theme, but not really. It was like the mechanic of doing things with your friends with this short-term alliance thing. That's a good question. With Failed Fate, it was definitely not mechanics first, but I don't think it was theme. We didn't have the demigod theme until we were done gameplay almost.
Ooh, man, do you remember early themes?
Oh, we had
different ones.
Yeah. Minions, not like actual minions, the like the TV or movie, but it was like you were evil scientists that were creating minions that you
it was
had
like
mind
an AI
control.
based.
Yeah.
I'm
glad we didn't do that.
We could not make it work for the life of us.
No, we tried really hard, and my car broke down, and Zach was driving me to work every day, and every day we spent the 45 minutes going into work working on theme, and I think it took like a week of that to get to the demigods. That was rough. All right, now I want to hear you talk, because I've talked about those two games a lot. I don't know the answer to this. Our next game, which if you're on the Discord, you already know about. If you're not on the Discord, I think this is the first time we're really talking about the name of it anywhere. But Max, will you tell us about your next game, Mythic Mischief?
Mythic Mischief. It started as I guess more gameplay focused. But the idea was like growing up playing the like miniatures games. We played like Star Wars miniatures quite a bit, and I loved those. And like I think wargaming in general is like such a different world than board gaming. And my hope was like, I want something that is easily digestible for like board gamers to like get into like a lighthearted war game. And it's like in a small box, and you just like can bring around and play a quick little game with those kind of rules with a friend of yours. It's not that at all. But that was certainly my initial push for it. And like, yeah, themes were tossed around for that. So many things changed, but like that was the hill I initially wanted to die on, was the
war game feeling,
the mini lighthearted war game. And like some of that kept, like
the lightheartedness is still definitely there.
Yeah. And like the initial wargaming aspect just turned into a indirect conflict, which I think is a really fun thing to do, because what it turned out is like a really simplified war game that is quick and easy to learn isn't that fun. And that's what I learned very quickly.
Is that because the fun of a war game is the complex like nature and strategy and movement of it?
Yeah, it's like once I started pulling back all those curtains and being like, well, let's just make this really simple. It's like, well, you're not doing anything. And like,
move, attack, done, game over. I attacked faster. Yeah.
Plus there's like the whole pre-post luck thing, which like I think when it's dumbed down, that luck factor is worse feeling than it is when it's a big game. I
think Moonrakers stumbled into good pre-post luck accidentally. Maybe I'm just remembering poorly, but like the whole hazard dice are random and can hurt you, but you can also plan for them by having shields or by buying crew that help with them. I really like the balance that eventually struck there, but I don't remember like having long conversations of like, is this too lucky? How are we mitigating that luck? But maybe we had lots of them at the time, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of initial like very specific elements of that I do not remember the course they took. They were just there. So with all three of these projects, we've run 2 Kickstarters. We're going to be running a third later this year. It did start just kind of as an idea. And I have seen on Facebook groups, I'm in a lot of different groups talking about board game design. And I see a lot of people that are like, all right, I've got all the factions, all the lore. I've got like a book written and my rule books written, and I started designing cards, and I ran my first playtest and it just really didn't go well. And for me, that's always like painful, because I'm like, oh man, they did so much work to realize that we just needed to playtest the crap out of this thing first. And that really is like the first step for Moonrakers. Like the day we had the idea, Zach had the idea, we were cutting out, we didn't have cards, we didn't have anything. We were cutting out like paper and drawing on it with Sharpies and trying to play it that way. And like my advice
would just be like, get it down on paper as fast as possible. If you have an idea for a single mechanic, get it down on paper as fast as possible. If you have an idea for a whole game, do that, and be prepared for it to suck. Like it's going to be terrible. Like Veiled Fate was terrible the first time we played it. And like, don't write a rule book. Like, I don't think we've written a rule book until we were like halfway. Like the artwork was almost started before we were working on the rule book, the final version of the rule book. Like, yeah, write the rules down somewhere, but don't like design your rule book. Don't like invest in a ton of stuff on that, because it's like that's all in flux. Like that's gonna change. Like I remember playing Veiled Fate and people are like, "Oh, can I read the rules before we play?" I'm like, the rules don't exist. It's all in our heads at this point. And I think there's some danger in that. Like you want to have it kind of written down, but like you have to be economical, right? Like if you burn out on an idea, like I did on that castle idea, like you're not going to have the energy to pick it back up a year from now and be like, "Oh yeah, that was an okay idea." Like you'll think of it, man, I was so dumb. That idea was terrible. Like you just want to keep iterating as fast as possible and find out what's fun about the idea. Max, like how did you, for Mythic Mischief specifically, like it changed a lot. What were some of those biggest changes and kind of what led to those?
Yeah, it's what you said. You're like chasing the feeling. You're like, you see part of it that's fun, and you're like, let's just tear back everything else until you're kind of left with just that. Because maybe some people are good at this, but it's so easy just to keep putting things on top of it and make it bigger and better. And like to your point earlier, it's like it's really easy to have a fun game in your head. Like,
yeah,
you can keep adding stuff to it and like work on the theory of it for so long, and then it will be broken when you play it.
Yep.
And I think so. Tabletop Simulator is like also a godsend for
it's
play
amazing
testing.
for testing. Yep.
Like, I loved the idea of like, oh, like quickly make some physical copies.
Yep.
But with like a pretty small curve, you can like get to a point of like iterating quickly in tabletop with any game, and they make a ton of stuff out there to help you with it. And there's free art programs out there to keep like pushing those cards further. I don't know, I love our switch to it because like, yeah, it's really easy to update, where like you were hitting those,
oh my gosh,
those stickers on the cards, and like,
do I have any of those?
Changes are difficult.
Yeah, so we so our first version was like literally cards that we bought that were just blank from Amazon on Moonrakers, and then we had a label printer that we like printed stuff out on and stuck to the cards. And I would spend like a day just making one version of Moonrakers. And then we actually did a printing, and that was a terrible idea. Like it wasn't ready for printing. We like printed a bunch of cards and then like played with them once, and we're like, well, half of these cards have to change. So I actually kept the cards and then cut out little stickers with type on them and stuck them to all of the like special ability sections on these cards, which is hilarious to think of now. But yeah, like TTS really has accelerated that. But when you're playing the game, it's hard. Like sometimes you're too close to it, right? Like you can't tell what's good and what's bad, or like something that feels really good to you because you understand the strategy of why you put it in the game feels great to you. And then that first play test you do, like people are like, why would I ever take this action? Or why would I ever do this thing? Or you just watch them do something that you think is obvious, completely wrong. And that's not because they're bad play testers. It's just your game still sucks. Like it's still going through the process of play testing. For Mythic Mischief, and actually just for all of our games, it's really hard, number one, to hear things that people don't like because it's your baby. And two, to parse what is a good idea for your game versus what is just a good idea. And I think that's like a hard distinction. Like in our Discord, we have a lot of really smart and really awesome people that play our games and test our games. And a lot of them are actually making their own games. And so it's really cool to have other game designers play your game. But sometimes they have an amazing idea that completely changes the game you're trying to make. But sometimes they have an idea, something that you really love that does need to change. And it's like hard to know, like, when does it, like, I need to apply this to my game and not. Is there anything in Mythic Mischief that like you felt or like that hurt when you were changing things, or that someone had a really good idea but it just didn't fit Mythic?
I mean, that came from me a lot of the times too, where it's like where you have this thing where like I'm holding on to this because I love it, but I also think
Oh
it
my
should
goodness.
probably go. And like when you're playtesting your games, like there's also this point I think in which anything before it you should kind of hold it all loosely. And
Mm,
like these ideas that come up that you're talking about in terms of like maybe it's just a good idea, not a good idea for your game. Like I think there's a period of time in which like maybe that idea will spark a better game
right.
that is a different one than what you're making. Um, and then at some point, I think it kind of turns over where it's like, I know what my game is now, and I want to pursue that game. And then you can kind of
Yep.
parse that feedback more.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also like playtesters are going to have totally different tastes
Yep.
in the games they like. And you are trying to make a game for everyone to enjoy,
Hmm.
but it also is impossible. So
Yeah.
I think it's just important to get a lot of playtests with a lot of
Yeah.
different
A
people.
lot of different people. Yep. And that's hard. That's hard to
It is
do
very
because
hard.
yeah, you especially if you haven't made a game before and you don't have a community yet, it's really hard. I'd
We can
recommend joining
just
our
plug our
Discord.
Discord. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the
like people
link is
make games all the
in.
time.
Yep, the link is in our bio right under this video. Um, we play a lot of the games that are being developed on our Discord. I think I've played 4 in the last month since I came back from paternity leave, and it's a blast getting to see those. I mean, they spark ideas for our games. They are things that we can pour into and just be like, hey, like I think that this is an amazing part of this game. Don't ever let this go. And you, as a designer, have to decide, is Austin right or wrong? Because I'm not the person making the game. Oh man, but I love that, like what you said of kind of just like, you know, you had to decide for yourself, like you like this part but doesn't need to go. And something that Zach said, and I wish that you were here, Zach. I'm sorry I made a bad joke about. I'm glad you weren't here, but Zach always used to say like, well, does it fit that feeling that we're going for? Like, does it for Moonrakers? It was, does it fit the feeling of going on space missions with your friends? And when we were getting advice on mechanics or when we came up with new mechanics, we had to talk about that. Something that Pocket Boy, I think is probably what that stands for, said, were there mechanics in VF or Moonrakers that got cut, but you wish could have worked out for the final version? 100%. There was one, especially for Moonrakers, we had enemy crew that would like come up in decks of like crude of like enemy ships, and it almost felt like you had like a rival that could come up and make a like an event harder. And it ended up just like punishing certain players and not other players. And then it was also back when we had like enemy ships that, and these were like the enemy ship captains. I would love to bring that back eventually, I think, just like mixing things up a little bit, but it just didn't fit the base game. Robert says, spoiler, Austin is wrong. He's not wrong, probably. But you know, that's neither here nor there. All right.
We had
So
we had some in Veiled Fate, didn't we?
A ton. I'm trying to think of my favorite.
We used to have so many more
Asymmetric.
moves.
Yeah, there was
Like the God
asymmetry
powers,
too.
there were so many of them.
Yeah. Oh, and there was like different terrain types, and like certain players could move across terrain types for free, and other players couldn't. And in the end, it just like it was like there were definitely players you'd want to draw instead of just like having it be equal no matter who you drew almost.
And we used to have like the earthquake stuff.
Oh, Dane said Sunder. Yeah, that was something we got rid of, where it was like you could like close pathways in between regions on Veiled Fate. A lot of our Discord players really liked that, but we had to get rid of it because it made every game an hour longer if players used it.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting to find out in playtesting is like when something that is fun is abused, it's broken, and like it's just like a thing you never really think of, and then someone gets in there, and I think there's a lot of people on our Discord specifically that love doing that.
Yeah. Well, we have several Discord players, that their goal to go into that playtest is to break your game, and it is so helpful, like so helpful. And sometimes he doesn't break the game, but he finds a new strategy that I never considered that just is like so good and so powerful, but is counterable. I don't think it's like broken. It doesn't like ruin the game. It's just like new strategies I wouldn't have thought of. And I love having people like that in the Discord that our chat, like they challenge you as a game designer too. And that's something that, go ahead.
I was as the designer, like when you are implementing all these things, you are playing within a pretty small box of like what is your game. And so like it's hard unless someone else is coming in and attempting to break it for you to get there and see those things.
All right, so far we have your first idea will suck no matter how good it is in your head. Get it down on paper or in TTS as fast as possible. Play it by yourself. I would always play like multiple hands and try to play it by myself. Then play it with other people. Still don't write that rule book. Don't pay someone to design anything. Just get it to a playable state. Play it with other people. And we actually had someone in the Discord recently kind of just like say like, hey, I went to, a forum and was asking about like name ideas for my game because I wanted to come up with a name. And one, coming up with a name is fine. Like you can do that at any point. I don't think that's going to be a waste. It's not like writing a whole rule book. Moonrakers was called AR Space Pirates for the first bit. Wow, we didn't touch on this at all. We didn't talk about it at all.
It used to be an AR game.
Originally, the plan was that you're going to be able to hold your phone up to a card and the part would like animate above the card.
And that was like the whole thing.
That was like the whole thing. Yeah, like it would build a ship. Even I think was like the thing. Like it would read different QR codes and like make a ship out of it.
Which
is going to be like, why is that not a thing?
I know
like,
it is a really cool idea.
One, it's like a $10 million project.
And mainly because we didn't want people to have their phones.
Right. We didn't want you to play a board game like this. One, because we don't play board games like that.
I remember going through that initially.
That would have been so fun. Dane said, I've been working on my game for a year and I still haven't named it. Untitled vampire game. Go to our Discord and play it. It's great. Moonrakers was AR Space Pirates. Veiled Fate. I don't even know what Veiled Fate was.
I don't know if we had a name for that.
I don't think we called it anything. I think it was just the next game. Okay. So he went to a forum and just like had some like things. He explained a little bit about the game and had some names thrown out there. And people told him, hey, that game's been made already. Don't make it again. And I got mad because like had someone told me that when I started working, when we worked on Moonrakers, we might have stopped working on it, right? Like we didn't know. Like it's a space game. It's a deck building game. Oh, cool. I can think of a few of those already. And then it has short-term negotiation. Okay, cool. I can think of a few of those already. And it's like, oh, it was called Demigods. Thank you, Robert. That is what it was called.
Yeah.
And then there was already a board game that had done a Kickstarter called Demigods. So we decided not to do it.
There's also a placeholder name, I think.
Yeah. I think
like
it was
Bouncy Smash.
Bouncy Smash. The placeholder name that became the actual name. Oh, goodness. But that was a great name. It should have been the name from the beginning. Anyway, they told him like, hey, like, don't make this game. Like everyone has this idea and it's been done and it's not good. And I got mad because it's like, first off, like 5,000 games come out a year. How many of those are in the realms of space, fantasy, pirates, or Egyptians or gods, demigods, Norse mythology? Like 4,000 of those 5,000 games are in those realms. So it's like, yeah, it's been done theme wise. Mechanics wise, maybe you have some small new mechanic, but there are a lot of games that come out that don't have really any new mechanics, but it's some kind of combination. Austin Kleon has a book called Steal Like an Artist. Have you read this, Max?
No, I've not.
He talks about how most artists are not actually unique. They're not coming up with anything new. They're just taking things from all of their different touch points, all of their different knowledge pools, and they're creating something new out of that. And I think board gamers do that as well, where it's you're taking experiences from all of your favorite games you want to play, and kind of pulling them together and making something new. And especially with Moonrakers, I feel like we had a little bit of Cosmic Encounter in there. We had some Dominion in there. We had some Galaxy Trucker in there. I think there's got some Splendor in there. Just like kind of taking ideas and mechanics from all of these and bringing them together. And you can 100% do that as a game designer. And if someone tells you it's been done before, sure, go play the game that they say is exactly like your game to make sure.
Well, and it's just like, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the story, but it's like, cool, play my game and then tell me a game that is exactly like this. But like me pitching my game on a forum and then being like, no, it's done, is like, how much can you possibly know about how this game plays?
We have a running joke in the Discord because people will come into the Discord and be like, hey, your game is exactly like Munchkin. And I'm always like, No, it's not. Have you played both Munchkin and Moonrakers? Because they're very different if you play them. I understand what you're saying. There are some similarities. I'm like, but it's a race to 10 and you can like work together. And it's like, okay, yes, you were correct. You're right. I'm wrong. It's Munchkin. So Moonrakers is now called Munchkin. Anyway, everything's great. Chuck White says that guy deleted his comments on Reddit. Did Reddit come to our rescue and tell that guy that he was wrong and stupid? Because that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, that's so good to hear that he deleted that. So all that to say, don't throw in the towel because someone tells you it's a bad idea, because you play your game the first time and it's not good, because a playtester plays it and is like, this isn't for me. One, early stages are always going to be hard. It's going to take a long time to get it to a playable state. And Max, do you have any advice on like how to keep moving forward?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I really want to drive this point home. Like when we say like these games that we made like sucked when we first played them, like it like really like unplayable. Like we did not finish our games because we either couldn't or did not want to. And so it's not like, oh, there's something here and we're like way off base. Like we were very far off base.
Really, really far. Like we almost quit on both Moonrakers and Veiled Fate.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah.
I think most of the time you play your game and even if it sucks, you have follow-up ideas. Or if you're playing with other people, they will have follow-up ideas and have a different point of view than you do for it. And I think it's just more because you can just sit there and think about your game all day, but it's when playing it that you kind of start getting those worked out in your head.
Yeah.
So just gotta keep. I mean, I'm curious what you think of this because it's something I go back and forth on. But how much to change a game between versions of it?
I was gonna tease you about this on stream today.
You can go ahead.
So last Friday, Max was he had an idea and he was slacking about it at like 9 p.m. and me and Zach have kids, so we weren't able to respond as well. So I got on Saturday morning and Max walked me through the idea and it was like drastically different than the last idea. And I was like, cool, I'll play test it while you're out because Max was going on vacation. So I play tested it Monday and I was like, this does not work. It's too different. Like there's just things missing. And one, probably don't try new things without the person that had those changes, because I just didn't understand some things. And we played it again on Wednesday and it was infinitely better. He had a chance to balance a few more things. But like, it's really hard to know how much to change. There are people that say change one thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what I would love to do.
Yeah.
But because like every time I do something like that, I'm like, oh man, if you change a bunch of stuff, get into a game, you have less idea of what is wrong with it. Yeah. Because it's like, did that one thing break it or did this other thing break it?
Oh, that's so hard.
We don't have the time.
Yeah. I think here's my take on it. And this is what someone just asked. They said, I hope there's an episode in this series about how you balance everything. When you are balancing things, I would change less things.
Yes.
When you are chasing the fun is something we throw around a lot. It's just play testing a lot and figuring out what the fun parts of your game are and trimming everything else back. So I guess we'll kind of transition and talk about that a little bit. Like your game is going to be too big probably the first time you play it, unless you're just like testing a mechanic. You'll have ideas and be like, that'll be really cool. I'm going to have like 20 different mechanics and it's all going to work together. And unless you are Merchant's Cove, which is everyone is playing a different game.
I was like, or you're building Gloomhaven.
Exactly.
Like, sure. Like we can have a slightly bigger box. Let's just keep going up.
We'll just make a whole other game too. And it's like kind of the same, but in Frosthaven.
It always felt to me like that was the game where someone successfully kept adding things and never had to turn their game back.
And it still worked great.
Cool.
But like in that point, I think you have to make big sweeping changes. It's like, well, that whole mechanic didn't work. Let's try this whole new mechanic. And Max did two big changes at once for me. He changed from a a card laying like action chaining mechanic for moving and doing actions to like a cube pulling action. And another big change he did is he had actions that you could move a character on the board to and get. And those were two different mechanics. It was like the ability to get more actions while you were on your turn, and then how you played your actions were completely different. And honestly, the board part would not have worked with that other mechanic of grabbing a cube from the board. And so sometimes you have to change more than one thing to make the whole new idea cohesively work. So don't just say, well, I can only change one thing, and then that new thing sucks because it actually needed 3 other changes to go with it. But balancing, like card mechanics balancing, Moonrakers is weird. Moonrakers had a whole Unity algorithm made to like balance cards. It was simulating like 10,000 hands of Moonrakers. Do you remember
about that? Yeah, that's a cool program.
Yeah, that was awesome, and it worked on like 80% of the cards. There were some cards that were like ally based that like you couldn't actually, the algorithm couldn't figure out how that benefited you because it was negotiational benefit versus actual gameplay and like the ability to do contracts. But that really helped us in balancing. But most people aren't going to be able to do that because Zach is just a weirdo that likes figuring that crap out. So,
and a lot of games do not need it.
No, they don't need that level of balancing. But like when you're balancing things, like it's a lot of just gut feelings, unless you are. Dominion had an algorithm too, I believe, or like at least like a rating system where they like would test new cards and be like, this is a 6, it needs to be this expensive and this rare or whatever.
And I was just listening to this, but like Magic was super broken when it shipped out balance wise, and so it's just like eventually got there.
Yeah, well, some say it's still really broken.
Well, I mean, it's also ever changing, so
yeah, it's hard to keep it balanced, that's for sure. Yeah, and balancing is a whole other thing. So this is the first episode in the series called the Journey to Kickstarter, Path to Kickstarter. And we're going to be talking about like a different section of it. And this is obviously the early section, getting your game to a playable state, a state where you can actually feel good enough to move forward. For Moonrakers, I mean, we were balancing all the way up until we shipped the things to Panda to make. We submitted things to Panda to make. We were still making small card adjustments, still making rulebook adjustments all the way up until that. So it's not going to be done. This making your game fun and making it the best game it can be is going to travel past this episode a little bit, but we're going to probably mostly just talk about this section of it in this episode. So balancing does come into that a little bit. And I think once you kind of have your mechanics down and you kind of have the feeling you're going for and you're feeling good about things and you're playtesting things for balancing, then you're going to get that you run into more of that, getting playtesters that have feedback that you really don't want to hear. And that's really hard. I remember Moonrakers didn't start with a player board. I was going to grab player board, but not important. You guys know what it looks like. It has 4 slots for your ship parts on it. Originally, you could have as many ship parts as you wanted. Like, I think I was like playing with like 8 ship parts in a game once. And someone at a convention was like, you guys really need to limit this to 4 ship parts. And I was like, that's a really dumb idea. Thank you so much. Like, oh, that's so nice of you to say. Thanks. I'll take it back to the team. And I took it back to the team, and Zach was like, that might be good. And then Alex, our designer, was like, I really want to make ship boards with like slots on it. And I was like, well, the board would have to be huge because we could put like 8 ship parts on it. And I was like, dang it. Like, now we have to play test with 4 ship parts. And it made the game better because you actually remembered what you were doing. You had like different abilities and you didn't have to track 8 different ship parts, but then it also made your choices more important. I don't know. It really made the game better. And that's hard to hear when you already think you have the game locked down, right?
Yes, it gets harder and harder to do bigger.
Yeah.
Like you get more attached to things. And I think that's something we've learned quite a bit through our games. Like you kind of always have to be willing to do something.
Veiled Fate was a race to 5 points. It wasn't a timed thing. Do you remember this? This was in like February of last year. And I loved it. I was like, this game is clutch. It's so suspenseful. Like everyone's at 4 and then they go back to 3 and then they go up to 5 and you have to hide who you are. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And Zach was like, this is bad. It's like this end game mechanic is bad. And I was like, no, it's not, Zach. You're stupid. You haven't played it enough. And then we changed it and it was better. And I was angry because I was like, dang it, Zach. I liked the 5 race to 5, but it was a much better game because of that. All that to say is it's really hard.
There's so many pieces. How long did we talk about a tie-breaking mechanic?
On Veiled Fate? Oh,
Yeah.
mercy. 2 months.
Like before there was like an actual order to the guys on it. That was like our solution
that
to
was the
not
final
knowing how to
thing.
do a tie-breaking mechanic.
There was a liar's dice mechanic.
It
but
used
with-
to have
with
a whole
feathers.
game for
It had a mini game for the tiebreaker.
You loved that.
I just love
I
liar's
was
dice.
I know, and I was like I can't play a big game like this and then play a small game to try to win it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's like I'm really good at Veiled Fate, but I'm terrible at liar's dice, so I always lose Veiled Fate because all the games were ending in ties. All of them were ending in ties. Yeah,
It's a big issue.
Oh man,
and so it felt kind of cheap if it was just like
if you lost. Yeah.
Oh, I won because I had
more feathers,
more of these. Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree.
But that sparked a really fun mechanic.
Yeah. So I think my advice for people in this stage is like before you do a playtest, really figure out what is the feeling or the like theme or the main mechanic. Like pick the thing that cannot change for you for it to stay your game. And then hold everything else loosely. For Veiled Fate, it was hidden in plain sight. These guys there has to be an advantage for trying to stay hidden. For Moonrakers, it was like you have to have that negotiation mechanic. You have to have that fun feeling of doing things with other people. For Mythic Mischief, do you have what that is, Max? That core feeling that you're holding on to?
Just a good old fashioned good time.
Good old fashioned good time.
No, I don't. I was thinking
spot.
about that. I don't know if I have a concise
feeling
because I want to partially disagree with you there because
Please.
I think that like if you're just getting going, like making games, and you might end up chasing a feeling and then play it, and then another feeling comes up, and like I don't think you should necessarily hold anything tightly. Like if you
dissenting opinions, I like this.
If you feel really strongly about something, then absolutely. But I think I went through this. I think where I had certain ideas for what the game was going to be, and then in early playtesting.
Oh no, I agree totally. In early, I'm thinking like late playtesting.
You said when you're just starting out, you're chasing a feeling and holding to it.
I misspoke. I'm the worst. But no, I agree. You can't. Well, I mean, Moonrakers and Veiled Fate from the very beginning, we had that feeling. I don't think every game has to start that way, but when you're going into like playtests where you're doing multiple playtests a week and you're really getting close to having a game that you're ready to move forward with to art, like you're getting lots of good ideas from playtesters, and it's really hard to parse like what is going to be good changes versus what is just making a different game versus the game I've already made. Because people are creative. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had an idea for a game we're working on, or someone's had an idea for a game they're working on while playtesting each other's games. And it's not anywhere near the same mechanic. It's just like, oh, I could do something kind of like that in a different game. But you have to make your idea, not other people's idea. And so there's like this competing feeling of make your game, but also hold everything loosely. And take constructive criticism and feedback. I don't know. It's a hard answer.
Yeah, it happens more fluidly than we can talk about it. And also, it is so easy today to get people to play your game. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of communities very similar to ours.
Yep.
Where like you just go invest in them and people will be thrilled to try out your game as well.
Yeah. Speaking of, we have a whole section in our Discord just about making games. And if you get your game to a very playable state and we play it and you're getting lots of playtests going, we'll even add its own channel in there. I think we have 2 games with their own channels in our Discord. So please check that out. If you are currently making a game, I would love to play it. I might not be able to play it the week you join. We're pretty busy playtesting our own games, but I literally playtested a new game today, and I'm pumped about it. So, yeah, it's really fun to see how creative everyone else is. Because I mean, yeah, everyone is kind of on that same journey of having an idea and wanting to make it something that other people are interested in trying out. And I mean, that's the fun part of board games, in my opinion. It's the Wild West. 5,000 games a year. It's pretty wild.
It's insane.
I can't play that many games a year, not even close.
That's a lot of games a day that you'd have to do.
I have not played 5,000 games in my life. So
Yeah, I wish I had a running tally.
Stephanie Hodges has a running tally every game she plays, and I think she gets over 2,000 a year, which is
Wow.
bonkers. It's not different games. I think it's more like 1,000 unique games, and then like she plays other games more than once. So,
Still.
it's super good still. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about? I kind of want to let's like recap. You know, you're getting your game idea. It's gonna suck. You're gonna try to get it to paper as fast as possible. Play it by yourself, make some changes. Play it with other people, make some changes. Look for the fun, chasing the fun. Like, okay, what was your favorite part about that playtest? How can I add choices to that? How can I duplicate that fun and put it in a different mechanic? There's going to be a lot of different ways of like stripping out the stuff that's not good and adding in the stuff that is good. And that's a long process. So it's not going to happen in a week. It might not even happen in a month. Our games take many months to get through playtesting, believe me. And we do it internally for a while before we even do those first playtests with other people on our Discord. So that's kind of that first step is like getting a game that you're confident with to go to the next step, because making a board game is very expensive. You can do it as a solo person. It is completely possible to do, but you don't want to risk that money unless you were very excited about the game you are working on. So that first step is not that expensive. TTS is like $15, and you can use Microsoft Paint. I would not recommend it. I recommend something like Sketch or Photoshop.
A lot of more free options that are.
Yeah, don't use Microsoft Paint. Sorry, but like prototyping and that is just time. It's not really hard costs. It's just your time. So you want to make sure that you have something you're ready to move forward with before you invest lots of money in design, lots of money in advertising, lots of money in production of sample copies that you're going to send to reviewers. All of that stuff is going to be stuff that we cover in future episodes. Yeah, because it's so hard. You have to become like an expert in like 7 different things, maybe more, to bring a game to market. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do. Luckily, we had a team that was able to work together, and we didn't have to all become experts in 7 different things. But yeah, it's very hard. Anybody have any questions about kind of your first game idea, or maybe not your first game idea? Maybe it's your 20th game idea that you're working on to bring to market. Go ahead.
We also want to talk about references here. Like you're not creating a game on an island. Like there are. Most likely there are already a few games that you're basing your game off of. Like go play those. Like
yeah,
you're probably misremembering things, and like you're probably misremembering feelings from it that like going to play them will help you. And like then I think we've done this for our games in the past. Like what are all the games that fit some of these mechanics? And go try to play those. Like
totally.
You're going to get so many ideas from other games, and when you're mashing them all together, like you said, like it's unique. It is not like it is both unique and completely stolen, and that's okay, because unless you are straight up retheming an existing game, it is probably different from that game.
Oh goodness, yeah, definitely different. I was going to hammer that home. Like if you're building a deck building game for Christmas this year, or Christmas is far away, your birthday this year, you should be asking for 10 deck building games. Like from your mom, your grandma, everybody should be buying you deck building games. So it's just so good to not know like, okay, what are people playing when I say deck building games? I need to be able to talk about it. If someone's like, oh, this kind of has like this, this mechanic from the Road to El Dorado, and it's like, oh, that's kind of an obscure racing deck builder. Like, have I played that? Like, you want to be able to talk the talk, one, just in playtesting, so you can understand what people are saying, but also like you never know where inspiration is going to come from. And to go back to Austin Kleon's kind of like you steal little things from a lot of different places and you create something unique and new. And that's yeah.
I think there's just like a natural aversion to do that. Like that if you're like you almost don't want to go play those games because one, maybe you find out that like your game sucks and
comparatively.
well just like or like that thing that you thought was unique isn't unique. And like I think there's a lot of bad news out there like in your head. And it's still very much worth it, because guess what even though you haven't played that game, a lot of the people that might buy your game have. So
Yeah.
you're
It's
gonna,
better that you know.
yeah, it is.
No, I love that your natural aversion. Yeah, like you're like, oh, I almost don't want to play other deck builders because right now this mechanic is original. Like I think I thought of it, but if I play another game that has the same mechanic, then it's no longer original, right? But it's better to know for sure. I'm really glad Lost Ruins of Arnak and Dune Imperium came out around the same time because a lot of people compare those games as being very, along with the Endless Winter game that was on Kickstarter last year, as kind of all three being worker placement with deck building. And like, if you play this one, should you even buy this one or like whatever? I think we've bought all three at this point, still waiting on Endless Winter. And I'm really excited to dig into those because I want to see how similar the mechanics are. Some people say they're very similar. Some people say they're very different. But if one had come out before the other one, it would have been way worse than this awesome. Like, no one is accusing either of those of ripping each other off. It's just a fun. They're both kind of similar game, you know. All right. Pocket Boy said, how do you get back on track when something in your game has to be removed? Man. Whew. So I am the hold too tight to things person, and Zach just comes in with a sledgehammer and is like, this is bad, and it makes Zach sound meaner than he is because he's very kind when he does it. But sometimes I get disappointed or down because it's like, man, I really like that idea, and everyone on my team is telling me to get rid of it, and everyone I play test with is like, I don't really understand this. And it's like, that's a hard thing to do or hear when it's like the thing you're excited about, right? Man, I would say what we do when there is a mechanic that we cannot figure out is we find people we trust. So for us, it's me and Zach and Max. We'll get on a phone call, we'll get in TTS, we'll get on whatever Zoom, and we will just hash out ideas for hours sometimes where it's like, well, what about this? Would this work? Could we try this? And it's just like a group brainstorming session. Some people are going to want to do that by themselves. Max did that by himself on Friday night without me and Zach and came back and pitched me and Zach on Wednesday, and it ends up being the mechanic we're moving forward with. Whereas I could never do that. I am a group thinker. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. I think recognizing which person you are, whether you're going to want to work in a team or we're going to work solo and figure it out, is a good idea for you. But really just hammering it out, doing the work, putting in that work of how do I recover from stripping out something that I liked. Yeah, I don't know, Max, do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah. Says has to be removed. So like already for some reason, like having the knowledge that goes like,
yeah,
I mean,
it seems like they're definitely at that point.
I mean, easiest way, like hopefully you're in a situation in which you pull that and just see what the game's like without it. Like add something else in later, but just see what it does with it gone. I think it's really tough. You're in a situation where like this doesn't work, but it's a core thing, and without it, I don't have a game. Like then you're just in a back in an ideation phase of how do you get a playable game again, which I think is really tough.
Yeah, that's really hard. It's almost like starting over.
Yeah. Go play games, go talk with people and see if something comes up.
I'm looking for our Moonrakers spreadsheet because Chuck White said, how do you recommend to keep track of changes? One, don't save over your TTS files. Never ever save over your TTS files. It's free. They don't really have storage issues. Always create a new TTS file when you are working in your game.
Easiest way to see incremental changes. It's just, oh man. And especially now because it can go back way later and be like, what does this game look like?
Oh gosh, that's so fun. I should do that right now on Veiled Fate. Oh no, I don't have them on this computer. Dang it.
In the same way, have a naming convention, use dates, just like keep, I mean, it's just
explain naming convention. People don't know what that means.
Like have it be called like the current iteration of the game with like a date afterwards, and just like keep things consistent, because then you can very easily reference it later. And like this is the best part about tabletop. Like it is more difficult when you are like, I think for Moonrakers, we were drawing over all the cards when we were making changes on it.
Yep,
Like
that was hard.
we don't have iterative copies of that game anymore because, like, I mean, we do, but they're
We
more
have some.
big scale ones.
Yeah,
But yeah, to have like a digital backlog of all your games is amazing.
it really is. I'm looking for our master doc for Moonrakers too. The like card master doc, just
Yeah,
to like
we
kind of show people. Yes, Moonrakers cards. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull this up on stream.
we keep Excel sheets of
Just because like,
cards.
especially in a deck builder, there's some math involved. Yeah, give me 1 second while I pull this up. There's some math involved, and it's definitely something where you're gonna have to keep track of things not just in your head and probably not just on cards. You're going to want to be able to compare, like, all right, how many iterations of this happening? We even had a problem in a playtest last week on Binding Ties, our next expansion. I couldn't believe it, Max. 4 cards came up that were all shield reactors. It was like a 4 shield, 3 reactor, a 4 reactor, 3 shield, a 5 reactor, 3 shield, and like a 4 shield, 4 reactor. And I was like, no way are all these on the board at the same time, number one. And number two, how do we have so many similar cards? And that was like a flabbergasting thing to me. So I went back into our notes, and I had accidentally used the same format on one of the contracts in Binding Ties to where it was exactly like one of the other cards in the base game. And that's like terrifying to me because I don't want to have someone have that in a game where they're like, oh, these cards are all really similar. They could have made this more unique, right? Like, that's not fun for anybody. All right. Pulling up the master doc right now.
That's really interesting, actually, because there's a lot of games I think where replayability is in like which cards come out each game. But the more of that there is, the more like playtest needs to happen to figure out if there are situations in which, because like this happened with Mythic Mischief all the time, where it's like,
Yep.
man, the game kind of sucks if those cards come out in a very specific way.
Yep.
And you're like,
and that's just playtesting balance.
How do we mitigate that? And like these are like the fun challenges that actually spark creative ideas and mechanics.
Yeah, the person that asked how do you balance things? Unfortunately, a part of balancing things is just playing the game 1,000 times. Board game reviewers get to play many games once. Board game creators get to play the same games 1,000 times. All right, here is the master doc for just the ship parts on Moonrakers, and that is just the base game. And then there's the first expansion. Let's look at just the contracts. There is a lot of info in just these sections. I think crew is a little shorter. Yeah, crew is not quite so bad. And then there's like even like player deck, like balancing, like how many of these cards are we going to need overall. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of math that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think this is also important, even if you're not, this helps us because we're working apart from each other and in a team.
Yeah.
But I think it is equally important if you're doing it by yourself, because what you need is a master list of updated things.
Yep.
Because I had this problem all the time where it's like, I'm like writing down in like my notebook, and I'm like typing up in like OneNote, and I'm like keeping things in a Google Doc. And I'm like, these things, none of them by themselves are like a complete picture.
Yeah.
And so keeping something like a master copy somewhere is nice.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Chris Chesney says, how do you translate a feeling or idea for what you want to a fun, playable mechanic? And then he also said, just playing more similar games together, ideas from. So how do you translate a feeling or idea for what you want to have a fun, playable mechanic? That's like the question. That is the golden question of board game creation.
Because there's going to be so many paths. Like,
yeah,
you can chase that feeling. And it's really, honestly, I think about just matching an existing mechanic that will suit that feeling the best. And not in like the only one that'll suit it, because you might go down a path and be like, I could totally change this to a like programming game. And now we have a like, and that really is going to suit that feeling. And it started out way different than that.
That's why you can have game jams where it's like, we're going to do a game jam about pirates looking for their buried treasure. They buried it, they forgot where it was, and now they're trying to figure out again. And you would get 10 very different games because, well, maybe not very different, but you know what I'm saying. Like the mechanics would not be the same.
Yeah.
And maybe by some miracle, two would be similar because they sat next to each other and someone heard it subconsciously and like, that is a great idea that I just had. But, you know, like they're going to be very different. And it's because like board games are huge. There are a lot of different mechanics. Like, Dane, yes, Game Jam, you say. Yes. Speaking of Game Jam, I'll wait to announce that till later. But yes, it is something that like, that is the magic question. And I think if you are trying to find it, like if you have a theme or an idea that you really want to make a game around, I think it's like a throw it against the wall and see what sticks kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Dark Fox. Cool. Well, we just hit an hour mark, Max. We should probably wrap things up. I think that this was fun. It's fun to kind of like think back to kind of how Moonrakers and Veiled Fate started, especially because we're like in this phase for Mythic Mischief still. So it's fun to remember how bad Veiled Fate and Moonrakers were, because I'm so happy with where they ended up, and I'm getting more and more happy every time we play Mythic. And it's funny because I was happy last version. I was like, this is really fun. I'm excited to keep iterating on this. And you came out with a new version, and the first time I played it on Monday, I was like, I don't know if I like this better. And then we played it on Wednesday. I'm like, yeah, I like this better.
Yeah. No, I always have these like bigger changes. Like, I know this is like one step back, but like it's the only way to like get further.
Yep. It's hard. It's definitely a one step back, two steps forward type project if you're making a board game. Well, thank you everyone for going on this journey with us. We're hopefully going to be doing this every few weeks, just talking about kind of that next step in the process. If you want to be eligible for the giveaway that we're going to do on Monday night, please comment after we're done the video with playtesting somehow in your comment. Do not just write playtesting. I will not add it into the drawing. I want to laugh, especially while I'm doing this.
Oh, wow. If Austin doesn't laugh, you're not in.
You're not in. No, it just has to be a sense. It doesn't have to be funny, but try to make it funny. Once again, we're doing something brand new next week. We are going to try streaming more, and we'd love to have you there. We'd love to hear ideas from you on if you like the content that we're creating or not, or if you have ideas for us. Next week is Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter page first look. I'm going to be going into active Kickstarters and just kind of talking about it from a publisher's perspective. I know there's one, for instance, that I'm going to say is way too cheap. They mispriced it for me. I think it should have been a little bit more expensive. I think they priced it for retail, and I think for Kickstarter to hit the margins that you need to hit and to get everything printed, it should have been just a little bit more money with something exclusive about it. And then for retail, you have that cheaper version that doesn't have that exclusive thing. But I'll talk about that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we're doing Austin Plays a Game. I love this series because it is literally me playing a game that I have not played before with someone from the community or with someone from our Discord. So I think Wednesday might be Tiny Towns. I have not played yet, and I'm excited. I just got Red Rising. I'm going to be doing an unboxing, I think, on Thursday. And I might do a little bit of the solo mode. We will see. And then Friday at 3:30, like always, we're going to have IB Games Weekly. So
big week.
Yeah. Ilya said hidden leaders. You'll have to find out on Tuesday, Ilya. I can't tell you that it is definitely hidden leaders unless you come on Tuesday. Dickless wants to know what's the difference between Game Jam and Game Jelly. You'll have to come back next week. We'll answer that question next week too.
And Game Compote.
Amazing. Game Marmalade, right? That's a thing. I think that's a thing.
It is.
Well, Max, thanks so much for being here as our special guest.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was wonderful having you. We'll see you guys all next week. Don't forget to comment for the drawing. And yeah, thanks for watching.
See ya.